Hello, this is the final report on our team project. The report was done for project management in the spring of 2022 at Appalachian State University. Professor Dr. Charlie Chang. Today's date is April 25th, and our team members are Alyssa Cornett, Carlos Ortiz, Lucia Marks, and myself, Diana Damaskin. The subject of our project is traffic safety educational material. Here's the table of contents, and these are the exhibits. For Chapter 1, which is one of the deliverables in our project, we conducted the kickoff meeting. On January 17th, 2022, the team conducted our initial Zoom meeting in which we got a chance to introduce ourselves to one another. Prior to the meeting, we had brainstormed ideas for the project, and after some discussion, we agreed upon traffic safety and culture. Next, we filled our kickoff meeting agenda template and answered the SMART goals questionnaire. Moreover, we completed the pruning tree and the sailboat visual exercises in order to detail out some of the near-term and long-term deliverables, as well as the risks and constraints of our project. It was very important to ensure that every participant was interested in the subject and that we shared a common goal and were equally committed to the success of the project. On the next slide, we'll see the detailed summarized kickoff meeting. So the project description, it was supposed to be completed by March 19th, 2022, and it would have been a free informational product in the form of a presentation video PowerPoint about the most common causes for traffic accidents, as well as tips on safer driving practices. The purpose of it was to bring to traffic participants awareness, various ways in which they could contribute to traffic safety, as well as a better driving culture in our community. In terms of goals and deliverables, we used the SMART goals to validate our goals. So the main one was to reach a maximum number of people, and the main deliverable was a succinct but comprehensive informational material. So our goal had to be specific. It is to create a free digital informational product within the given 8 weeks time frame about common mistakes and measures one can take while being an active traffic participant. Our goals had to be measurable, so that would be the number of people our product reaches in the short term, as well as the statistics on traffic accident in the long term. They had to be achievable, so we do possess the competency and the level of preparedness to conduct the appropriate research and compile relevant information to complete the project. At that time, we deemed that no external funding was necessary and that each member had access to the internet and sufficient skills to use the necessary tools. And finally, the goal had to be result-focused, which was to create a better driving culture, ultimately, in which drivers would feel safer and more confident on the road. During that meeting, we assigned the roles. Diana, myself, would be the project management, Lucy, the research coordinator, Carlos, the editor, and Alyssa would be responsible for marketing. Some of our assumptions were that people would be interested and that there would be demand for our product. Another assumption was that the internet would be the most effective way to distribute the product. The plan was to gather the information, revise and select relevant data that would compile everything in an electronic format, which would be made available via social media platforms and distributed through immediate friends, family, and other like-minded people. The key success factors were effective communication, autonomy in work, interest in the topic, equal contribution of all group members, and completing tasks in a timely manner, basically staying on track. The status meetings would have weekly Zoom meetings, and then other communication plans were GroupMe messages, email, Google Docs, and Google Drive. The next major deliverable was Chapter 2, Organization, Strategy, and Project Selection. To define the organization strategy in the selected project, we used the Job Well Done Consulting business case template. It included the background, business objectives, the opportunity statement, critical assumptions and constraints, analysis of options and recommendations, preliminary project requirements, and most importantly, the financial analysis, and we used the net present value and the payback period. In this business case report, we have built upon our initial proposal and developed in a more detailed, specific business aspects of the project. Because this is the type of project the estimated future cash flows can be reliably assumed, we used the NPV and the payback period models to determine whether the project is viable from the financial criteria standpoint. The results confirm the viability of the project, which allowed us to move forward with it. And on the next slide, we see here the calculations. So with an investment of an estimated $8,000 and a discount rate of 10%, our NVP is 62.60 and 20 cents, and the payback period is 4 years, both deemed acceptable. This is the summary of our JWD Consulting business case. The background. The project is intended to better prepare commercial and non-commercial drivers for both common and exceptional traffic scenarios, teach prevention and avoidance of accidents of all sorts, and troubles on the road. Business objectives. Our strategic goal is to sell our services to major transportation companies and develop digital information and training products to reduce driver accidents and traffic violations. Current situation and problem/opportunity statement. We saw opportunity in this educational segment where there's not much auxiliary information to supplement the conventional driver's handbook. It is definitely not meant to replace it, but rather complete it. Some of the critical assumptions and constraints are our qualifications, the effectiveness of means of distribution, the expected demand, and obviously no previous experience. Analysis of options and recommendations. We were supposed to conduct a survey to gain some feedback for the project idea and possibly expand our team by outsourcing. Preliminary requirements. Some of those were extensive research data, clearly assigned roles, a cloud where the gathered information and edits would be accessible to all, define small goals, and clear due dates. Potential risks. Despite cooperation and remote work, potential risks are presented by the unpredictability of the current pandemic and its effects on our individual ability to attend to our obligations in the group. And this concludes my part of the presentation. Thank you. We'll move on to the next.
For Chapter 3, Organization, Strategy, and Project Selection, our team created a project charter and preliminary scope statement. The project charter marks the starting point in our project. It presents the subject matter, the beginning and end date, and the project managers, and it assigns the roles and responsibilities to team members and clearly states the objectives and approach for the project. The scope statement builds upon the project charter. It gives a detailed description, purpose, and objectives for the project. It lists functional and non-functional requirements, assumptions and constraints, and risks and boundaries. It lists project deliverables which are of special significance in terms of scope creep prevention. Now we'll get into our preliminary scope statement. First, our project description. Having conducted preliminary research and reflection on a potential topic for the project, our team has agreed a common concern for all of us is road safety, specifically the proficiency of the average driver. Therefore, we decided to create a digital project intended to supplement the required driver's handbook's material. Our products would educate and prepare drivers for both common and rare situations on the road, aiming at prevention and avoidance of accidents, as well as any other possible troubles on the road. The purpose of our project. The preparation required by law before one can obtain a driver's license varies by state. Besides, driving lessons are not a requirement everywhere. It is fair to say that we all begin driving with widely different levels of preparedness. The purpose of this initiative is to bring to traffic participants awareness various ways in which they can contribute to traffic safety, to teach defensive driving techniques, ultimately leading to better driving culture in our community. Project objectives. We will develop an electronic, educational, and informative product to help drivers prevent and avoid accidents and troubles on the road. This will be done by March 19, 2022. We will teach drivers new techniques on how to maneuver when faced with exceptional driving situations and learn good driving habits to minimize the risk of car accidents. We will create tool gates to help the team successfully deliver this product on time, and each team member will be responsible for completing assigned tasks and communicating its findings in accordance with the product requirements. Project requirements. Functional requirements include the capacity to improve driving skills by teaching how to identify accident-causing road conditions and behaviors, the ability to conceptualize and act on the driving behavior changes needed to foster good driving skills, tools to help monitor and track the number of drivers reviewing information provided and be able to respond, and means for drivers to share feedback on the information and tips provided and to create a social community. Non-functional requirements. This information will provide drivers new safety driving insights. The research provided will help reduce accidents and foster a culture of safe driving for commercial, leisure, or everyday driving. Local car rental companies will benefit from making their customers aware of driving safety information and will work with our team. Project assumptions. We will find proven research to help create a digital driving safety informational product. We will receive company sponsorship to help start the project and collaborate with the team. We will be able to find all the resources needed to develop a useful digital driving safety product. Drivers will want to learn accident avoidance techniques and improve driving. Transportation and driving companies will want to use our product. Project constraints include the current COVID-19 pandemic. With the unpredictability of the pandemic, it could cause restraints on our team at the rate at which we are able to produce effectively and efficiently. While we intend to work remotely collectively as a team, which does allow us to communicate and collaborate on various platforms, the uncertainty of the pandemic poses potential health risks. This can result in project delays and/or deadline constraints. Project boundaries include legal and licensing constrictions, availability of budget and cash flow, and individuals who do not have access to technology or online platforms. Project risks include the fact that the project may not mitigate the cost of driving accidents at the rate we have forecast. If our information becomes outdated or is not adhered to by employees, the rate of driving accidents and subsequent costs may not improve at the rate we forecast, and we will not gain business. And next, we have to invest in new ways to deliver our product in its latter years. If technology rapidly evolves, the platforms we use to deliver our information may become obsolete, and new presentation methods could be costly. Our product will deliver the following products and services: an online informational website with company inquiry capabilities, online social media presence and regular postings, a comprehensive PowerPoint presentation for company presentations, and informational and question and answer sessions with company employees. Listed here are our project milestones, which include completing our preliminary research by February 20th, completing our marketing materials by March 30th, the start of our marketing campaign on April 1st, and the launch of online informational website and the offering of our product services by April 20th. Pictured here is our project charter, which outlines the roles and responsibilities of each team member and the approach to our project. Diana is the project manager and research coordinator. Lucia Marks is the research coordinator. Carlos Ortiz is the editor, sponsorship coordinator, and Alyssa Cornett is the marketing coordinator. Brian Weimer is our sponsor. He is an avid road cyclist and father of a driver in training. Chapter 4, Defining the Project. One of the defining aspects of the upcoming project was the work breakdown structure involved in the delivery of the objectives and outputs. We have created the work breakdown structure and used it as the basis for the WBS dictionary, in which every large deliverable is coded and has a sub-deliverable work package. It represents the smaller, indivisible task. Both have been reviewed by the project sponsor and adjusted in accordance with the sponsor's suggestions. The proper completion of the work breakdown structure is crucially important further in the project realization. Pictured here is the work breakdown structure, and as you can see, the 4 main milestones needed to create the auxiliary education safety material are research for creating the material, ordering print copies, designing the online materials, and distributing the print copies and online materials. Our sponsors suggested that we add one-to-one sourcing, identify the main sources of research, and to remove duplicate research initially under data collection. Pictured here is the work breakdown structure dictionary. This really helps with the visibility and readability of the work breakdown structure. On the left, you see the WBS level and the WBS code. The WBS name and description of each task. We created WBS mapping on the left side and incorporated the 80-80 rule. Chapter 5, Cost Estimation and Budgeting. Cost budgeting and estimation was based on the work breakdown structure. We opted for 2 methods of estimation. First, the apportion method based on managerial expertise and experience. This method used a top-down approach where large deliverables were allocated a % of time down to the smallest work package. The second was the bottom-up approach, which implied calculations departing from the smallest work package. We had allocated an estimated $8,000 in the apportion method, but came up with a cost of $8,700 using the bottom-up approach. Our team had agreed the 8.75% difference between the total cost estimation obtained through the apportion method and bottom-up method is insignificant. Therefore, it's safe to assume the expected cost value is close to the actual cost of the finished project. The final estimate for our total project cost was $8,700 in 180 hours of work. Here we use the apportion method for top-down cost estimation. As you can see in the left 3 columns, we list the major deliverables and 2 sets of sub-deliverables, as well as the work breakdown structure ID, and we'll get into the rest of the chart in the next slide. Here you can see our complete bottom-up approach cost estimation. You can see that the work breakdown structure ID, name, and description are listed in the left 3 columns, and we'll get into the rest of the chart in the next slide. For the bottom-up approach for cost estimation, we use 3 different approaches: the optimistic approach, the pessimistic approach, and the most likely approach. And we calculated the total cost for each work package based on these 3 approaches, based on the number of hours and the cost per hour. So you can see at the bottom, the total cost for our optimistic approach is $5,610. The total cost for the pessimistic approach is $12,190. The total cost for the most likely approach that we took was $8,602. Which is not very far off from our expected cost of $8,701. We used the framework of the work breakdown structure to create a project network and Gantt chart that outlined our project's critical path. We created the activity on node project network by establishing a stop and start node and establishing task dependencies and identifying the proper and needed changes to dependencies. We then identified each activity's normal time and used forward pass to calculate early start and early finish, and backward pass to calculate late start and late finish. This allows us to determine each activity's slack time. This allowed us to create a Gantt chart that identified each of these elements and outlined our project's critical path as seen in Exhibit 6.1 and 6.2. Please note each project team members worked 8-hour workdays, 5 days per week. Here is Exhibit 6.1, our project network. As you can see, activities A through P are listed on the left column, and a description of each activity is also listed. We determined which activity precedes which and how long each activity would take. We then calculated early start and early finish and late start and late finish using forward and backward pass. This allowed us to calculate the slack time for each activity. Pictured here is Exhibit 6.2, our Gantt chart. The red line of arrows follows the critical path through the project, and for each activity you'll see a cluster of boxes. From left to right, top to bottom, these are the early start time, the activity ID, the early finish time, the slack time, the activity description, the late start time, the duration, and the late finish time. Chapter 7, Managing Risks. Our team identified potential project risks in order to create a risk breakdown structure. The risk breakdown structure allowed us to profile and assess each identified potential risk in order to create a risk profile and a risk severity matrix. After recognizing the triggers and responsibility for each identified risk, our team was able to identify the best response for mitigating or reversing each risk. This is outlined in the risk response matrix. The identification of risks and the impact each risk may have on our project allowed us to reevaluate our methods and frequency of communication. Carlos requested a change in frequency of communication and completed a change request form seen on slide 35. Pictured here is Exhibit 7.1, the risk breakdown structure, and you can see that the four main categories of project risks we anticipate may arise are technical, external, organizational, project management, and customer risks. Pictured here is Exhibit 7.2.A, the risk profile, where we identified different avenues for assessing each risk if it may arise. Pictured here is Exhibit 7.2.B, the risk severity matrix, where we identified for each risk event the likelihood, impact, and detection difficulty for each risk event in respect to each other, and we also identified for each event when it would be likely to occur during the project duration. Pictured here is Exhibit 7.3, the risk response matrix, where for each risk or risk event, we identified our initial response, a contingency plan, what may trigger the risk, and who will be responsible for mitigating or reversing the risk should it arise. Pictured here is the change request discussed in a previous slide. This change was requested by Carlos on March 22nd. He wanted to introduce daily brief meetings in which each team member would report on work completed and findings. And the reason for this change is that delays represent a highly probable and impactful risk. The impact of this change will be that identifying possible delays before they occur will really help us out. It will significantly increase the chance of completing the project on time. We will proceed with the daily meetings immediately. This change request was approved by Diana on March 23rd.
Chapter 8, Scheduling Resources and Costs. During this stage, we evaluated activities to ensure that the correct team roles and responsibilities were properly assigned. A RACI matrix was created from the activities identified on the WBS hierarchical breakdown. We took some time to understand how to create the RACI matrix that will allow us to understand each activity, team members' participation, roles for tasks, and deliverables. We worked on a RACI matrix ensuring that there weren't any duplicated roles and responsibilities for each category, except for information updates. Activities were clearly defined for each person, with the roles and responsibilities for each of those tasks. A round matrix chart was included to note task responsibilities and participation for each team member, and stakeholder signatures were required. Chapter 8, the deliverable was the RACI matrix. In this page, you can see from left to right the responsibility assignment matrix WBS hierarchical breakdown as the starting point. That's where we took all the assignments or activities that were needed to be able to complete this project. Those activities or tasks would then move into a RACI responsibility assignment matrix table. And then on the top section of it, we had each of the team members associated with this project. The objective of the RACI matrix was to ensure that we noted who was responsible, who was accountable, who was going to be consulted, and who was going to be informed. As you can see, we ensure that there was only no duplicative activities outside of just the information. One, that there were some occasions that there were multiple team members that were simply being informed of the work that was being created. Lastly, we created a matrix where we also counted on the left side we had the tasks, and the top again our names, and a check mark for each of the tasks that we were involved in through the process, so he could clear it, identify the activities for each of the tasks and the members that were going to be active for each of those tasks on the RACI matrix. Lastly, we got the stakeholders signatures, similar responsibility for the tasks and assignments that were assigned to them, in addition to securing the sponsor signature. Through this process, he helped us understand how to create a RACI matrix and identify each of our team's competencies to ensure the roles and responsibilities were assigned to the team member that best was suited for each of the project activities. There were multiple versions of the RACI matrix created, but we were able to correct the initial unbalanced roles, responsibilities, and duplication through a collective effort. We also took into consideration cross-functional and departmental projects and processes each of our members were responsible for as we created the RACI matrix. Throughout this process, we were able to see the importance of choosing and communicating using the RACI matrix, each member roles and responsibilities for each of the activity listed, and ensure we eliminated activities and role ambiguity. Chapter 8, the deliverable was creating a RACI matrix. On this page, you can see that we use the WS hierarchical breakdown as the starting point, then imported each of the tasks into the responsibility assignment matrix, where we listed all the tasks and the codes on one side of the table, and across the top we had the name of each of the team members that were part of the project. The reasoning for this was to ensure that we noted who was responsible, who was accountable, who was going to be consulted, and who was going to be informed for each of those tasks. Understanding that responsibility and the accountability for each of those tasks needed to be on either one person or two persons, with not having a duplicative role for each of those. For Chapter 8, the RACI matrix was the deliverable. We started by using the WS hierarchical breakdown. So then we could pull all the activities or incorporate all the activities into the RACI matrix, where we listed all the codes and the tasks. And then across the top, we had each of our members' names. So then we could assign who was responsible, who was accountable, who was consulted and who's going to be informed. So as you can see from the table, there's no duplication on the responsible and accountability, but you can see that on the information side, as far as who is going to be informed, there are several tasks that there's multiple members that were going to be informed of the task that was going to be created. Lastly, we created the RAM table, again with check marks for all the activities that the members were going to be participating on. So then we could get stakeholder and sponsor signature where we had the team sign off that they were in agreement with the work that they were responsible for, and also securing the sponsor signature as approval for the distribution of work. Throughout this stage, we were able to understand how to create the RACI matrix and identify each of our team members' strengths to ensure that the roles and responsibilities were assigned to the team member that was best suited for each of the project activities. There were multiple versions of the RACI matrix created, but we were able to correct initial unbalanced roles, responsibilities, and duplication through a collaborative effort. We also took into consideration cross-functional or departmental projects and processes each of our members were responsible for as we created this RACI matrix. Throughout this process, we were able to see the importance of choosing and communicating using the RACI matrix. Each member roles and responsibilities for each of the activities listed and ensure we eliminated activity and role ambiguity. Chapter 9, Reducing Project Duration. Projects are dependent on a solid schedule that accounts for time and cost each of the activity needs for on-time completion. We needed to account for opportunities on how to save time to hedge against possible unforeseen issues, such as system failures, weather, labor issues, etc. The project crashing table we worked on during the sections helped us see if there were any opportunities to save time and the costs associated with each of the activities crashed. A project crashing table was created accounting for all project activities, slope, max crash time, and normal cost. Lastly, we identify each of the project activities and crashed using the least cost method and accounted the adjusted cumulative slope until reaching the max crash time and cost. For Chapter 9, the deliverable was to build a crash table and also to crash down our project to the max crash time and also the cost associated with that crash. So on this page, you can see the table to the left where we listed all the activities, their IDs, the slope, which is the cost for crashing that time, the max crash time, normal time, and normal cost. To the right, at the top section, we have just your normal costs and time. So initially, the project is 45 days, and the total cost, direct cost, was $1,400 for the project. We then started crashing. We did our first crash, which was we crashed activity A. It was our lowest cost, $50 slope, and that helped us bring our days down to 44 days from 45, but our costs went up. Our direct cost went up from $1,400 to $1,450. Then on option 2, crash number 2, we ended up crashing E and F, the next lowest cost for 60 and 80. We crashed those activities, and that action led us to a savings in two additional days, for 42 days for total completion and total cost for the projects of $14,190. On this page, we continue the crashing of our project. We crash our project 3 more times to get into our total max crash time for project duration of 35 days and total direct cost of $17,950. To the right, you can see the stakeholders and also their signatures approving the crash activities and also the costs associated with getting to mass crash time for this project.
Chapter 10, Leadership and Effective Project Management. Leadership within project management is essential for the success and completion of the project at hand. In such contexts, demonstrating a range of competencies, skills, and behaviors is crucial. Managing a project consists of formulating plans, monitoring the results, making trade-offs on time, budget, solving problems, and taking corrective action. Leading a project consists of recognizing when to get the project back on track, initiating change, providing direction and motivation, and adapting as necessary. Establishing the dependency map allowed us to visualize the cross-project dependencies throughout our project's duration. The data shows that our network of interdependencies are coordinated and synchronized to ensure our project is going in the right direction while keeping requirements and sequences in mind. Pictured here is Exhibit 10.1, Team 3's dependency map. The high cooperation is a result of high stake and involvement in the product development and financing. The medium cooperation is justified by initial conversations and quote requests from the publisher and web designers. We managed to establish the timeframe and their availability. We received answers to all questions relevant at this stage of the project. In order to increase the cooperation, we ought to assert task-related influence, say more information like a prototype, and perhaps a security deposit to demonstrate commitment to the cooperation. Low cooperation with some stakeholders at this stage in the process is expected, but it would need to be reinforced through both task-related influence and inspiration-related influence. In other words, we would need to convince these stakeholders through marketing efforts of the utility and liquidity of our product.